are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that. Yes, sir.
All right.
You're
I
my
think
boss, Brian, you and Peter.
we're all set.
All right, so I will begin. Welcome everybody to the Communications Committee meeting. I have 4:04 as our begin time, and I will welcome everybody. Been great chit-chatting with you. I'll start with the Ethics Act statement. It is the duty of committee members to avoid conflicts of interest and appearances of conflicts of interest in performing the duties as a member of the Communications Committee and North Carolina State Bar. Any member of the committee who is aware of any potential or any personal conflicts or appearances thereof with respect to the matters before this committee should disclose those at the meeting. So if you have them, let us know. And if it comes up that you have it, let us know. So we will go down the agenda as it is printed, you all. And the first item that we have is the approval of the January 2021 minutes. Do I have a motion?
I would move for approval of the minutes.
Second.
All right, it was moved and properly seconded. I know it was either Heidi or Catherine. Okay, thank you, Peter. All right.
All right, that's unanimous.
All righty. All righty. So next we will have our 2021 first quarter recap. And we're going to have both Brian and Peter to kind of go through those different sections. First part is live streaming. I think that's you, Brian.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to say we had a big achievement this past quarter in terms of live streaming. We broke 100 subscribers to our YouTube page. We are at 104 subscribers right now, and that allows us to have a custom URL for our YouTube page. Peter has already put that in place. Well, there we are, 104. But now if you type in, I believe it's youtube.com, there it is, / North Carolina State Bar, and it will take you to our State Bar YouTube page. So that's fun. If you want to tell anybody to check out the YouTube page, you can simply say, go to youtube.com / North Carolina State Bar. That's nice and easy. As far as live streaming, of course, we continue to live stream our different committee meetings. Some subcommittee meetings, you can see were very well attended, or at least viewed a great deal. We've got some of these are the analytics that Peter is displaying on your screen here, with nearly 1,200 views recently. One of the most popular videos that we had was the most recent March 23rd Subcommittee on Regulatory Change meeting. That actually, you can see there has 458 views. So that is by far, I think, our most popular.
Leading the charge.
Yeah, well done, Mark. You officially went viral for the bar. But we also did live stream the State Bar versus Patrick Magaro DHC hearing. We live streamed the audio, and you can see there that was also fairly well attended or just viewed a number of times. But again, our live streaming continues, and I think we'll have some updates on equipment shortly here. But we're going to continue to live stream these council meetings and so forth. And I think there's, I guess, just my own personal observation is that there's an increase in views, an increase in folks that are watching simultaneously. I know that one particular subcommittee meeting on regulatory change had at one point over 70 live viewers or people watching while the meeting was actually being live streamed. So it's a good thing. We're continuing to push that content out, and people are taking advantage of it.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Brian. Next, we have a discussion about podcasts. And we were talking about you, Mark, before you hopped on about the podcast.
Yeah, we're very happy to have Mark commit to be the permanent podcast host of the State Bar until he retires from the practice of law. And so it was quite a commitment, and we really appreciate it. We had some a podcast released this quarter with the officers, with President, with Barbara and Darren, We have another one recorded on the ethics committee that I'm still working on getting fully edited and out. And I just wanted to show you that there's a couple of ways now to see our podcast. We got the podcast on our website. So if you were to go to news and publications, you have the choice of Bar Talk Podcast here. And we will be posting the episodes directly onto the website, so you can get right to them and listen to them through the website. They're also available on, and you see here we had 99 listens to the Barbara and Darren podcast, which is pretty good. And so you can get to it from iTunes, from Spotify, and from our website and Google Podcast as well. So we have we'll need to come up with our next list for this quarter, and hopefully record one or two and get those out this quarter. And we'll just keep plugging away. I think, content, the volume's important. So not all of them have to be bangers, but we just need to, have some that are good, get some content out there so people can remember to regularly listen.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure they all consider bangers. It just depends on the person whose perspective you're coming from.
That's right.
All right. Next we have equipment update. I think that's Brian as well.
Yeah, so this is just a quick little update. I know this has been mentioned in other committee meetings so far this week, but we have acquired 2 new cameras that will allow us to live stream in-person meetings, and also should allow us to essentially create hybrid meetings where some folks can be in person, but if perhaps you cannot attend an in-person meeting but still want to attend via Zoom, we can do that as well. These cameras really take a 360-degree shot of the room, and of course they will turn and focus in on the person that's speaking. So Peter and I have been kind of playing with those things, seeing the capabilities. And I know Peter set them up for use just last Friday, I believe, with
Yes.
judicial standards as well as IDS. So it's, I think they're working. We're going to, again, continue to see exactly what they can do and how we can best deploy them. But certainly it was our first impression is that this is a really great solution for this question of, can we continue to live stream meetings once we return in person, particularly the larger committees such as this committee, ethics committee, and things of that nature? And I think the answer is going to be a very clear yes.
I agree. Well, I have to share with you all, and I'm so happy to be able to share that I was actually a part of, Darren and I were at the IDS commission meeting that took place at the State Bar on Friday. So we were actually able to see how it all works firsthand, and it was phenomenal. It worked really, really well. Everybody that was there in person thought it was really, really good. But I have to give you this little this caveat that when you hear Peter or someone say, hey, beware of the owls moving around, the owls are the actual cameras, and they look like little owls sitting on the table with eyes. And some of our members were like, what owls? Where are they coming from? You know what I mean? Like they were literally thinking it was some owl in the room as opposed to the actual camera. But it was really cool. And they literally do move and zoom in to whomever is talking. And if we got the display up, everybody up that was off-site was displayed up on the TVs and everything. And it worked really, really well. We got a lot of good feedback from the commission about it. So I appreciate that.
So that's going to be something that if we are able to have an in-person meeting in July in Asheville, that these might come in handy where we will have some sort of hybrid meetings where people who are unable or choose to attend remotely can still participate. So we'll have to be working that out.
And, I didn't ask this before, Peter, but how many do we actually have? Because I know it was 2 in that room.
We have 2. That's it. They're
That's
portable.
it.
You can move them around. They pair together to make it so they have a bigger range
Mm-hmm.
of audio and video. They only pair 2 together right now. I would imagine that they're continuing to work on updates that maybe we at some point would be able to pair a third if we were to procure one. These funds were from the North Carolina State Bar Foundation, which was it's the foundation that was set up when we were building the building to help with offset the cost of maintaining the building. And we asked them for these funds because we feel like this is along the lines of maintaining the building and improving the building and access to the building for everyone. So it was a generous donation from them to be able to procure these, and we still have some additional funds that we can use to get some additional camera equipment for other live streaming that we're going to be looking at this year.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Next, we have database software project that I understand is going really, really well.
Yeah, I'm really happy to report that we're still, this past week, we got an update from our project manager from the North Carolina Department of IT that we are still in the green light phase. Everything is moving along in with the speed at which we expect. We've been, the company's been working with each department to spec out their programs in their software. Everyone seems to be pleased right now. The Office of Counsel we've heard the word giddy over what they might be able to do with this software. And we think that more important for this committee, that this will be a much improved experience for lawyers when they access their account through the state bar. The hope is that we are able to go live in the late summer, early fall. I think that with the idea that we would have a rollout in place for the lawyers to access their accounts for the new dues season and for the new CLE year. So we're still on track. We haven't hit any road bumps, but it is a software project, so I'm certain there will be some bumps. We just hope and anticipate that they would all be smoothed out before the go live plan for the late fall. I'm happy to answer any questions about it, but it will encompass pretty much every department of the bar that deals with lawyers, specialization, paralegal certification, CLE membership, the Office of Counsel, disciplinary management. So we're excited, and we think this will improve our internal efficiency, but also improve the experience for lawyers when they're dealing with the bar.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. Are there any questions? All right. So next we have a report from our subcommittee on live streaming the DHC hearings. Takia, if you could give us a report there. And I appreciate you serving as the chair of that subcommittee too again.
Well, I appreciate you asking me to serve. It's no problem. Good afternoon, everybody. As I said, I'm the chair of this subcommittee. We did meet last month, and I think we made some good progress. We had some good conversations during the meeting. Basically, we talked about what it would look like and entail to live stream the DHC meetings. And I know they, Peter and Brian talked a little bit about how they live streamed a couple of the DHC meetings before. I think one was Facebook and one may have been YouTube, correct me if I'm wrong. And so it kind of boiled down to me thinking that the two issues would be, can we live stream these? And if we can, should we live stream them? Under the, I guess, prong, if you will, the can prong, do we have the ability or authority to do it? And do we have the technology to do it? So I think we have the technology to do it. Or if not, we might be in a position to have the technology to do it. And I also think that we determined that we would have the ability to do it. I know there's the admin, I can't remember what the number is, but it essentially says that someone can make, if you want to broadcast it, the hearing, someone can make a motion to the DHC council and they can, pretty much just approve the person or whoever wants to stream or broadcast the hearing. And I believe that some reporters or TV stations have done that and used that. And I think that was a way that we were kind of looking at trying to be able to find the authority to be able to stream it without having to create a whole new thing, a whole new rule to make it possible for us. And also as to the should, I was one of the ones that said I didn't know if we should, just because we can. DHC hearings, they basically put aspects of lawyers' lives on Front Street, and some aspects that everybody, you might not want everybody to know. And I know prior to COVID, the hearings are open, they're public hearings, but prior to COVID, people weren't necessarily chomping at the bit to get to those hearings. And so we were trying to figure out also a way, if we do decide to broadcast these hearings, if there are certain checkpoints that a person could go through, like for example, if they wanted to go to the live meeting at the bar building, they would have to check in and do that sort of thing. So we were looking at that being a possibility, as people signing up and checking in to be able to get a link or something to be able to watch the hearing. We didn't have any members of DHC or defense attorneys or anything like that in the meeting. We kind of wanted to all get on the same page first. And I think we kind of did. I think we got to a good place where everybody was on the same page, and we asked staff if they could check into some things. I think it was any factors that may make it harder or prevent us from being able to stream. So I would defer to Peter and Brian and how as it relates to that.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that the subcommittee talked about was, we were really focusing on what do we do after COVID, after the COVID changes are finally done. So I think in the interim time during COVID, if there's an in-person hearing, we're going to be doing our best to try to stream it, because we're certainly trying to limit access to the building. Once we're post-COVID, trying to determine the equitable and proper way to have live streams, how many we should have, and what factors should go into consideration when determining whether we should live stream a particular hearing, whether that's geographic distance from the trial, whether there's access issues for people being able to get to Raleigh to view a hearing, whether there's a public health or safety issue in terms of the numbers of people who would want to attend, and if there would be a need to try to keep those numbers down by having the ability to live stream. So Brian and I are going to put together some of those factors for the next meeting, and I think as Takia said, the next meeting we're going to bring in some members from the Office of Counsel and others to try to talk to them about this and see where we're going. But I don't know that I don't think we have any action items or anything right now to report.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
I agree. And I just wanted to point out that I thought it was interesting that we all, when we first formed this subcommittee, we thought, yeah, surely we should be live streaming everything. And I think it was because we were in the midst of COVID, and it was, the access was so hard, stringent on the access. And then we get more, a lot of these restrictions are being lifted, and now we're all kind of like, well, I don't know, you know what I mean? And you really think of it more clear. And then of course we had the wise and seasoned expertise and knowledge of Mr. Tyre Brown comes stepping in and saying, but hey, we have this administrative order the rule that is already there. Do we even need to look at this? You know what I mean? And so I think that's a really good place that we're at with the subcommittee. And I look forward to the next one that we have. So thank you again, Takia, for that, and the other subcommittee members too. That was a shout out to you, Todd. You're supposed to, yeah. I'll be here. All right. So next we have, first, does anybody have any questions or anything for the subcommittee or for Takia? Okay. All right. So then we have a report from Publications Editorial Board. I think, Jennifer, are you bringing that? Or who's bringing that report?
I'm going to do that, Dorothy. Thank you.
Okay. Got you.
Yeah.
I didn't see you on my screen. I apologize.
I'm present.
Gotcha.
Madam Chair. Thanks, Dorothy.
Mm-hmm.
The Publications Committee continues to do its work of reviewing articles as they're emailed to us from our very capable editor and the person that facilitates our work, Jennifer Duncan. We get, just to go over the process with everyone, because actually we have added a process that we had convened a few of the committee members to look at our process. And the way it works, we get articles, the board members get articles from Jennifer, and then we review them, and then we opine by email. And sometimes that's one word, publish, or 3 words, do not publish. And it kind of seemed a little bit like maybe we should encourage more dialogue, going in deeper on some articles. And sometimes people do opine more by email. But what we've done is set up a step now where if there's consensus, there's consensus. And so we'll just go to publication. But on articles that generate some discussion or controversy or disagreement, or the board is kind of split on whether to publish or not, we've decided we'll have the opportunity for meetings in between the article dissemination when we get them from Jennifer and when we might have a quarterly meeting, much like subcommittees do. And so we'll sort of set aside articles and have that option either at the discretion of the chair, or even a committee member can suggest, let's try to set up a meeting in order to review this article or some group of articles between when we see them first and when we meet. Then at our meetings, we generally go through an agenda where we kind of have now a consent agreement on the articles that we'll publish, and then we'll again further review articles that might generate some conversation, and then brainstorm usually for new materials. And that's where this committee can help us. We're always looking for article ideas for the next edition. We try to recruit authors sometimes. Jennifer gets unsolicited offerings from people, but everything Jennifer gets, she puts out to us, I think.
Gotcha.
Maybe some upfront process, but I don't think so. I think we see whatever she gets. And that's kind of our process. The other thing is that the pubs committee, when we met in person, has always been jammed between other meetings, and people, we got 1 hour exactly, and then people split and go to the next meeting. What we did for this quarterly meeting was put the meeting at the end of the day, and it's good that we did, because we had a fairly long discussion about controversial subjects and how we might just, how edgy should we get. And that was a robust conversation, and we did go a good 20-25 minutes beyond our allotted time. I appreciated it. I know Jennifer did. I think the other committee members did. A few had to drop off, but it was good to have that extra time. So I'm happy to turn it over to Jennifer if she has anything to add, but I think the pubs committee is alive and well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Do you have anything to add, Jennifer?
No, I don't believe I do, but please do always keep us in mind if you feel like there's a hot topic. We are not asking you to write on that topic unless you volunteer to do so. We will do, the board will do its best to try to contact a potential author, or if you have an idea for a potential author that you would want to contact. Volunteering an idea doesn't necessarily mean you're volunteering to write. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Awesome. I'm sure that's some encouragement. I appreciate you. All right, so now we'll move to 2021 second quarter plan. We kind of touched on it a little bit on the podcast. I know we're going to continue to work through those podcasts and have Mark to produce us some wonderful ones. And so I'm sure he would love to hear any great topics that you have. And if you are willing to be a guest, and we'll continue to report that to everyone else, that if you are willing to participate in a podcast, that he's open to having you. Did you have anything in particular that you wanted to note on that, Mark, by any chance?
No, I mean, I think, again, I'm happy to be the host. I know Heidi did a great job providing me with some of the content and background for some of the interviews on the podcast that you did. And I think that it's that finding the guests and topics where, I'd love some help. I'm happy to keep being the actual host, but figure out, what we're going to cover and who we should talk to. I think the other thing I know we talked about, and I go back and forth on, is what the tenor is. Like the ones we've recorded, if you've listened to those, are very kind of chatty, conversational, get to know the officers. And I guess what I'm wondering is, do we continue with kind of a get to know the state bar theme? And we've talked about there may be other things, not just officers, but get to know staff, get to know what we're doing, kind of an educational piece? Or do we want to shift or in addition to that, cover more substantive topics? Do we want to talk about the preamble change? Do we want to talk about something before the ethics committee or other things that would be viewed as more kind of controversial, substantive, and maybe have a pro and con debate about those? I think we can go either direction, but I'm not sure we've decided yet. And you could potentially mix in conversational ones with more content-driven ones. It reminds me a little bit of some of the discussion that we have with the editorial board on publications. Is do we want stories about lawyers, or do we want to dig into meaty topics like death penalty? I think we want to think about that for the podcast too, in terms of our direction and mission and what we as the State Bar really want to be using the platform for. So I welcome thoughts on that either now or at some other point, Dorothy, but that to me is kind of an inflection point for the podcast to think about the direction we want to go.
I totally agree. I see your point. I think it would be really, really good to utilize some of the publication articles that's in the publication and those authors of those, and maybe give them a platform to come and expound more on what they have written about in those articles. That could be a good, they're already knowledgeable on whatever they wrote about. So I'm sure most of the time when you write something, you have much more that you could have included that you didn't, you know what I mean? But
I do think that's a good idea. I know within our firm, I've done that with our podcast, like someone will give a webinar or do an article, and then we'll do a tag along podcast to kind of tie in. It's a different channel. You may get different listeners. People may want to listen to a half-hour podcast, but not a 1-hour webinar. I see Andrea's hand. I know she was having trouble. But I don't mean to take over for you, Dorothy.
No, you're fine. But Andrea, before you guys saw Jennifer's was up before yours. If I
okay, all right. See, we're both watching different sets of hands. That's good.
I don't want to jump in front of anyone, but kind of jumping off of what Dorothy said about content in the journal. I was on a Zoom yesterday that was led by the Florida Bar, and they were talking that twice a month they do a little podcast with their president. And they said some of their most viewed ones were on lawyer wellness and well-being. And the column we have in the journal every quarter has been really popular on wellness and well-being with Laura Marr. And she does lots of CLEs and personal consulting, all that kind of stuff. And she might be a really great topic if we want to kind of go down that rabbit hole, and then again reference it back to the journal. Almost every quarter, I get several reprint requests for her column, and it's not typical that I get a lot of reprint requests. So she's striking a note somewhere.
Right.
So just wanted to throw that out there as a potential.
I think that's awesome. Andrea?
Okay, so the point on tying it into the journal, to me, being on the publications board for so many years, I feel like that is something that I would like to see, like, how can we take this to the next level? Because I feel like we've talked about this the last several meetings, and I think it's a great idea. And just to give you an example of why I think it's a great idea, for example, the other day when we had our meeting, Mark mentioned the death penalty, and that was an article that we struggled with because as far as whether or not we should publish something that is clearly a controversial issue. And we talked about, and when we have controversial issues, we talk about usually whether we should have points and counterpoints. And we like the idea of putting things that are bold and wet out there. As we know those words very well by now.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I'm sitting here and I hear we bring this up all the time. So what do we need to do to have that one podcast, Mark, where we talk about the death penalty or we talk about the opioid crisis, because those are articles that are controversial. Like, do we need to have a process where we formally request that and it gets decided upon by you or by this communications committee? But like, so what do we need to do to get from point A to point B?
I mean, from my perspective, I think if we decided we wanted to see if Justice Exum wanted to do a podcast about his death penalty article we're going to publish this summer, it's a matter of reaching out to him to confirm interest, setting up a time, and and I would sit down and we'd coordinate, we get it scheduled. I think it's really, to me, the piece that I'm looking, I guess I would say I'm looking for help and assistance on are what are the topics and who are the guests? Because I don't necessarily have time to individually or decide, okay, we're going to do it and reach out to all of those guests and kind of do some of that logistic. I'm happy to host it, happy to review the articles or the other stuff, so I kind of create an outline of what to talk about. But I think it's that outreach scheduling piece that, at least for me, I'm not going to have time to individually do that coordination piece.
How long does that usually take you to do the podcast from?
Yeah, the recording time is less than an hour typically. I mean, and our recording times are usually less than that, but because we edit it down. But I tell guests we can do it in an hour. If they're nervous about it, we may have a pre-call for a half an hour to talk about what we're going to talk about, so they get more comfortable.
But then you have to edit and.
Well, Peter does a lot of that hard editing stuff. So the technical piece in terms of setting it up. So it does take more time than that. But in terms of the guest time and my time, it's usually an hour of recording, and then Peter does the sound editing and the technical piece to get it ready to release.
I was just thinking in terms of, just take the death penalty, for example, if you could wait till after it was published, and then if you saw, if you had some immediate kind of comments from folks, you could grab one of those folks and do your point counterpoint. You wouldn't want it to be too stale, but if you could get it done within 2 or 3 weeks after publication, it'd be kind of timely.
So do we need to delegate somebody to reach out? Like, in other words, I guess what I want us to focus on is, how do we get from point A to point B? So if we, let's say the sequence of events is we publish it, there is some discussion that is healthy and good about the point and the counterpoint. We decide, yes, let's do it within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Mark says, yes, I can do it. We know that Exum would be the logical person to bring on. We would likely want to invite somebody who disagrees with his point to get on there, but who's the actual person that's going to take it and line that up for Mark? Do we need, as a committee, to delegate that, or will staff do that? I guess that's what I'm asking. Logistically, how do we move forward?
We can do that if the little podcast group just determines that this is who they want to interview. We can work on getting all of that set up. I do want to caution that maybe we should use the death penalty story as like a hypothetical instead of guaranteeing that that's what we're going to be doing. We can do that. I think the journal article plan is easier if we have more time to record something before it's released, almost, so it can be released with the journal instead of trying to be under a pressure gun to get something out. I mean, we can do our best, but there's always the chance that it's just something has come up in the interim time that makes that 2-week period very hard to get something put together and recorded and out. With this being kind of the side job of a few of us, it's kind of hard to guarantee that we have that time. So the more lead time we have on these things, whether we know there's an article coming and you can do a interview with the author and have it released right around the same time as the journal, that would be easier for us than doing kind of a reactive one, at least being able to guarantee that we can do a reactive one.
Yeah.
So I was going to say that I'm willing to be one of those persons that I can help and reach out to these folks. I'm seeing that both Ashley and Heidi put into the chat that there is a podcast subcommittee and that they're willing to continue to work on that and move us forward. So I think we definitely have a crew of folks that would be willing to do that, reaching out to folks and ask if they would come on and do the podcast.
And if there's sensitivity to the subject, you can, maybe they run it up the chain. Peter,
Right.
my only point, since we were using the death penalty to discuss, was that if there's already concern about presenting just one side of the view, then do you make it worse if you just reinforce that in your podcast?
Right.
But
So I saw Alice and then Jennifer.
So I hate to be a kind of a wet blanket. At the publications meeting the other day, we were talking about the concern that we have relative to our responsibility to not use state bar money, mandatory dues money, to promote, political platforms with which some of our members might not agree. We play that up against with the Journal, making it so bland that, nobody reads anything except the grievance page. And that's always, I think, a struggle. But what I would like to suggest, I think the editorial board is still sort of working through how we balance those concerns about being an interesting publication versus the concerns that we have about complying with our Keller responsibilities, if everybody remembers the presentation on Keller. So my suggestion would be maybe to start with podcasts that are not terribly controversial about political issues. And one thought that I had, and I have seen at national bar meetings where they have the communications director get on and talk about things that were really popular, where sort of focuses on individual members, either members of their governing board or governing body, which I think Mark has done that with our officers, or members of the bar. And one thing we might do is get some of these folks who've gotten the Distinguished Service Award, who have largely gone unsung this past year because we haven't been able to present those in person. And that might be a place to start with something that's not controversial. You're automatically going to get an audience for the people who know that lawyer and like that lawyer, or don't like that lawyer, whatever, believe in that lawyer. And then that gives the editorial board some more time to kind of work through how it's going to deal with that issue, which I think should be something that's sort of also taken in consideration by the communications committee too.
Great.
Just my 2 cents worth.
I think that's a great point. I think those are some great ones to do right out the gate. The Distinguished Service Award members, that people that we haven't been able to actually give it to them in person. Jennifer, you took your hand down? Were you okay?
I was just gonna say, I can try to be.
I see you, Andrea.
Did you say? Oh,
I was letting Andrea know I saw her.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was just gonna say, I can try to be more conscious of when we don't always have a lot of lead time between when an article is approved and when we're getting ready to publish, but I'll try to be more mindful of that. Who do I raise this topic to? I know not this quarter, but the following quarter, we're going to be probably publishing the North Carolina Equal Justice Alliance's executive summary on their civil legal needs assessment that they just published. So, and we're going to dedicate probably a good amount of space in the journal to that. And the justice who headed that, might be a great idea for an interview. Who do I give a heads up to about that?
I think it would be, you can do that through me, Brian, and Mark, or any of the three of us should be able to.
Okay.
If you give us a heads up on something that you think would be good. I think, as someone put in the chat, the Distinguished Service Award and the 50-year lawyers are both ripe for topics and people to talk about. A lot of this falls on. A lot of this is not, the lack of podcasts is not on Mark. It's on just the rest of the world happening and not being able to get them done. So if we have to rededicate ourselves more, more time to this, and we'll, I think a good goal of at least of 2 podcasts a quarter is something that we can attain. But I don't think that we can ever expect that we're going to be pumping out 5-10 podcasts, every couple of months. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So we just need to keep that in mind. Yeah.
Point well taken. Andrea? You're muted.
You're still muted, Andrea.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes my little space bar works and sometimes it doesn't. Sorry. So couple thoughts to follow up. One is, Alice, to your comment, I think, and maybe I didn't make this clear, I think what I was looking for was not necessarily just bringing on the author, but using it as an opportunity to bring on the other point of view. And I don't know if that would make a difference. And I agree that the death penalty may be like too hot of a topic at this point, but maybe we can look for a soft opening on this format and just find something that's pushing the envelope just a little bit to see if we get more listeners. Just, a thought, and I don't know what that topic would be yet, but if we know that something is a little controversial, not like way out there, just to experiment with having two points of view on, again, just to see, do we get more hits that way? And if we do, then it might encourage us to look into that a little more. And if it doesn't make a difference, then we don't have to worry too much about it.
Gotcha. All right, maybe we can do a topic of Krispy Kreme donuts versus Dunkin' Donuts and start off with something like that. Just joking. All right. Anything else on that topic?
Depends if the light is on or not, Dorothy.
Right. Anything else on that? All right. So let's move to courtroom conference room technology study. I think is that you, Peter, on that if it hasn't been initiated yet, but planned for 2021, it's going to go into 2020.
Yeah, I think maybe, Brian, were you going to talk about that or is that me?
I'm sorry.
I mean, I think it could be either of us. I mean,
Okay,
but
yeah.
we've talked about this before, that we're planning to bring in a consultant at some point, particularly when it's, I think public health considerations allow us to meet with somebody, because we need somebody in the room to actually look at our courtroom, look at the technology we have and what we don't have, and give us some opinions on just what we can do to improve that building further. So it is kind of pending, just kind of in a pending status, and we'll be able to update everybody hopefully by the end of the year.
Yeah, and the goal is to have some sort of plan or quote available to be able to start planning for next year's budget, whether that's a request from the bar, our foundation, or inclusion in our budget. So we have a little time, but we're gonna we're gonna get that ball rolling here this quarter.
Awesome. All right, then next we have communication with district bars. We have talked about a pilot plan, putting out a pilot plan of, with last quarter we talked about sending information as individual counselors to our different district members about what's going on, kind of the report that we used to have some years back that folks would send out to their members about what has taken place at the state bar quarterly meetings. And so Peter talked about having a pilot program where we use some of us, and we thought having us as the communications committee members, that we would be a good group of folks to be the pilot or be a part of the pilot program, where we would utilize us. He would get the materials to us, and then we would work through that process of disseminating that information out to our different members using that template. Y'all remember what I'm talking about, the template? He would email it to us, and then we would actually get it out to our members, and of course, personalize it for our different districts and get it out to our members. Did you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so we've kind of done a proof of concept on this and found that we can send an email to you that is, you can edit, especially the top of it, put your own message. And then the only then issue is to provide you with an email list that you can use to then send it out to your districts. I think we're always trying to be mindful of the time constraints that this might put on some of our staff. And we think this is a way that we can get this done without adding too much extra time into the process. And that was one of the issues as the old Counselors Connection, is that it was very time intensive for us to try to get that out for everybody. So we think this is a way that can be done, but we would like to try it with a small group after this quarter for the next one that would go out. If we could get a group from this committee, I don't know. I mean, maybe that this committee is a little too big. So if you want to volunteer to be someone for us to try this with, that would be really helpful. And then we can maybe get 5 to 10 of these out this quarter through this process and make sure that there's nothing that we're missing during this plan, and see if we can get this to work.
All right, sounds like a good plan. All right, and then the next thing, I just wanted to let you all know that Peter Brown and I also talked about the form that Peter created some years ago, that where we as counselors could give the information to Peter about what we're doing in our district. So remember that form that has on there, I've given a CLE, or I've spoken to a Rotary Club group, and just basically you're reporting the different things that you've done as a counselor, and making that particular form one that is electronic, that you can go on to like a site and be able to fill, like a fillable form, fill in the information there, and it automatically goes to Peter, as opposed to us having to find that form, fill it out, scan it, email it back, or fax it, or whatever in that way. And so Peter is going to work on.
Yeah. So we've done we're trying different methods to try to make this work the best way possible. And this is a Microsoft Forms sheet. There's advantages and disadvantages to this. It'd be really easy for you to access, but it would be hard. You can't come back and kind of edit your own form. You have to send in a new submission every time. So Brian and I have been working out, whether this is a fillable PDF form or a site that you can track checklists on. We're going to come up with a way to make it easy and on SharePoint for people to just pop on and submit that they've done something, and maybe with a little description of what it is that they did to satisfy these things that they're encouraged to do while they're counselors.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Peter. I love how Peter and Brian work, because we talked about this last week and Peter already has done it. So it's already working on it. And I appreciate that. That's really important to me, because I know we're all so busy and we do so much of what is on that form, but we forget that we've done it, or we just, and it goes unappreciated. A lot of it, well, it's appreciated, but you know what I mean? It goes unnoticed because we forgot to report it in some way. So I wanted it to be a good way for us to be able to report that information. Any questions about any of that stuff, or any of our 2021 second quarter plan, any of those topics? All right. So then next is new business. I don't think we have any new business unless something came up that I'm not aware of. All right.
We are up to 105 subscribers now.
So in this little bit of time?
Yeah, one more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's some good news. All right, well, that is what we have, you all, unless anybody has anything else that you want to report or ask a question about or anything.
And I would just really quickly add about the podcast stuff. It's very easy for that to slip through the cracks for us. And so if you have something that you're really interested in, email me or let me know so it stays on the top of our heads, because when you're struggling to balance what to do, that's one of those ones that you can easily put to the back burner. So I won't be offended if we feel like you're pushing us to do something. It'll certainly help us to keep it on the top of our heads.
Awesome.
Yeah, the only other thing I just want to add, I saw Tom, you just volunteered to be a part of that pilot program. If anybody else would also like to be a part of this kind of volunteer group to give this a try, please just shoot Peter or myself an email, or just email both of us. We'll be sure to include you in the group. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you all. I will entertain a motion to adjourn at this time. If we
Move.
All right.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Okay.